I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to Conversations with Al McFarlane. Glad to be here and glad to have you along. Wonderful, cold day here in Minnesota. I see my friend and colleague Kamal King is joining me from Atlanta. Kamal, how's it down there in Atlanta right now?
It's low 60s, I believe, but it
Oh
still
boy.
feels cold to me.
Well, I think it was down to about 7 degrees here last night, and with the
Ooh.
wind from the northwest, a deeper, stronger, more biting wind chill. But that's what we expect here in Minnesota.
Mm.
Thank you for joining the program. I'm expecting a couple other people to join the program, but it's always good to be with you. And one of the things that I wanted to share with you and our listeners is that I had a chance to make contact with a brother. I'm not sure how I found out about him, but his name is Cesar Atuire, Atuire. He's a philosopher and he teaches at the University of Ghana, I think in Accra, and I'll get that exactly right. But he lived for 20 years, 27 years maybe in Europe, and came to my attention because he wrote a paper called Black Lives Matter and the Removal of Racist Statues. I got it, I read it, I sent a note to him thanking him for this powerful, what a 19-page essay that was part of a book. And what was fascinating to me was to get this direct uh, interpretation of the Black Lives Matter movement and of the events here in Minnesota from somebody who was looking at it from Accra, Ghana. And the person who is also a philosopher, teaches philosophy, is a polyglot, mastered several European languages, obviously several African languages. So I have this piece, and I ask him for permission to send this to you and to our colleague Bernell Powell and to Youssef and Jeannie and to the group of us that usually meet on Thursdays to review this article, Black Lives Matter and the Removal of Racist Statues. Okay, put a powerful global perspective and historical perspective on what
Mm.
statues mean to people, not just Black people, but to people anywhere on the planet, and the purposes, the uses, and how they come to retire or destroy or, further um, elevate the importance of statues and
Mhm.
the legacy and the ideation, the ID, the identity of a people. So I'm going to be sharing that with you, and I might even drop a few words of it today in the program because I was fascinated by his approach. His conclusion, I can say this, was that uh, there has to be a public discourse about things like statues, and we focused on statues, the tearing down of the Confederate statues and others that represent slave trade. But he also tied that to the fall of the statue of Saddam Hussein, uh, and to the history of statues being either erected or destroyed, depending on the political and cultural and uh, attitudes of communities. And he's saying that this moment with Black Lives Matter and the confluence of people examining and questioning the damage that the statues represent, he calls it a Kairos moment. And I think that's worth us examining. So I'm going to share that with our team and ask us to have a conversation about it. And in fact, I'm going to ask him to join the program from Ghana. And it'll be a fun program. I'm excited about the opportunity to have this discussion. But Kamal King, what's going on with you? What are you reading and what are you thinking about? You told me to read the second. I bought it. I'm reading it,
Yeah,
but I'm
it's
just getting into it. So
yeah,
what?
it's like I said, I had to go back and reread it
Mhm.
because of the implications that this Second Amendment had with regard to this argument on gun control now, and people just pick up. Let me go back. Um, when I thought about gun control, I just felt as though, well, it was the rights of the people to stop governments from being oppressive.
Mhm.
And that was my basic understanding from my reading in my studying in high school and in college. But as Sister Carol Anderson has dissected the Second Amendment and given us the history of the Second Amendment, what I've learned is that the Second Amendment was insisted upon by the slaveholders because of the militias that they had to catch slaves, and not only to catch slaves, but to go into black, even free black people's homes and take their weapons away from them. So it put a different light on this whole Second Amendment, and it was insisted upon by the Madison, the guys. This guy, I think his name is Venable and Benson in Georgia, and in South Carolina, they insisted that they have this right in order to, before they would join the country, before they would sign into the new Constitution. After the Articles of Confederation, they didn't work. So when they were trying to put together this Constitution, this Second Amendment was insisted upon by these slaveholders because they knew that the only way that they could protect themselves and protect the institution of slavery was by having an individual military, militia. And so it puts a whole different light on the Second Amendment to me.
That's a whole different take. I never had considered that. And so that's fascinating, but it makes sense. It makes sense. And it explains, on the one hand, why, the offered argument that this protects us from tyranny from abroad.
Right.
That's one story that we grew up with, right? It's the official story.
Right.
But the reality is the insistence came, as you said, behind plantation owners in the South who feared insurrection by the people they held in bondage and slavery. And once again, the compromise was one that acknowledged and supported their sensibility, and therefore the Second Amendment.
Correct.
Interesting.
And it also it shows the international flavor, because during the same time, the Haitian Revolution was taking place with Toussaint Louverture, and that scared all hell out of the South. And the plantation owners in Haiti had moved into Louisiana and into the southern states, and they were, the word was spreading. These blacks, took over and they killed. I mean, in Haiti, they went through and they wreaked revenge in Haiti, and that's was another motivating factor for the plantation owners to get this militia in, to protect their militias. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about, and so it kind of explains why, we always talk about Haiti being penalized by the European and American world, kept in a position of being the poorest, most destitute nation in the Western Hemisphere, and among the worst off nations in the world. And it's not by accident, and not by lack of resources, not by lack of energy or will or desire by the Haitian people. It's a concoction to further dissuade and to prove the idea that a revolt against white supremacist thought and institutions was by its nature ill-fated. And this was the reward that you get. And it's called perpetual punishment. Haiti had to pay France reparations for the French landowners' loss of their property, meaning the Africans. That's crazy.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's it's the way it is. Haiti was the most profitable colony that France had.
Yeah.
It was the most profitable colony that France had. I think they were doing sugar. I'm not certain what the other crops were, but I know sugar was a huge crop. And so it went from being the most profitable to now you see what it is. It's just
Mhm.
in disarray. And it's still this racial animosity between the light skins and the dark skins.
Mhm.
The Dominican Republic. They share the same island. Haiti and the Dominican Republic is on the same island.
Right.
And if you look
Hispaniola.
at the people and the rulers,
Mhm.
you can tell the difference in the skin color.
Mhm.
And it's the same type of thing that the United States used with the poor whites here. The poor whites have consistently voted against their interests. And that was fed to them by, no matter how poor you are, no matter, that you have you basically have the same interests as these slaves, you're better than they are because you're white.
Mm-hmm.
And they've bought into that. I was always interested in, why would a poor dirt farmer fight the Civil War?
Mm-hmm.
Owned no slaves, was living from day to day on nothing.
Mm-hmm.
But they bought into this thing about being white. You're better off than those black people. Yeah. So and it still has ramifications today, as you know.
I'm Al McFarlane. This is Conversations with Al McFarlane, talking to my friend and colleague, Kamal J. King. Kamal King is a retired attorney, a corporate attorney for Coca-Cola, spent a number of years representing that company in West Africa. Let's talk about that in a few minutes too, Kamal. But is active in community and church in Atlanta. And from time to time, we talk on this show and on our Thursday variation of it with other lawyers and community and civic leaders about whatever topics are top of mind. We invite you to be part of this conversation as well. If you are checking us out by Facebook or YouTube, you can join the chat. I think that AZ on my team is monitoring the chat. And if you have a question or a comment or an observation, we'd be glad to share that with our listeners here on KFAI and viewers on our social media platforms. Thanks also to our relationship with the National Newspaper Publishers Association, NNPA. My company, Insight News, is a member, a longstanding member, and NNPA has launched its own social media platform, Black Press USA, on Facebook, and we are streaming live to Black Press USA as well. So thanks to NNPA. If you aren't familiar with the work of NNPA or the Black Press of America, I'm inviting you to check us out. We've been doing great work for our country and for our people for over a century. And we believe that we offer an alternative, a separate analysis, a truer analysis that is inclusive of our story. We charge that our story has been intentionally omitted or distorted for the interest of those in power and against our own interest. We know that our story won't be told properly until we tell it. We have decided, and we continue to tell our own story to ourselves and to the world. That's the Black Press of America. If you read Inside News, check it out anywhere here in Twin Cities. Check it out online at insidenews.com or go to NNPA, National Newspaper Publishers Association, and look at the collection. Over 200 Black newspapers across this country, all doing phenomenal work, representing and connecting and tying together a story of resilience, of grit, of hope, of aspiration, and a story about the truth that we bring to the idea of making this great experiment called democracy a reality for ourselves and for everybody else as well. Kamal, uh, go, go,
Let me. I
go
don't
ahead.
know whether you watched 60 Minutes this past Sunday.
I did not talk about it.
Yeah. I think it was either the second or the third segment was on China and the United States. I'm gonna recommend another book, and it's called Destined for War. Can America and China escape? And I think the name is Thucydides Trap.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna put it up here. Destined for War by Graham Ellison.
Okay.
I read this. I started reading this probably a year or so ago, and just like the second, I've had to go back and reread parts of it. But on 60 Minutes on Sunday, that segment, if you can find
go
it,
back. Yeah.
They talked about how China in the last 40 years has surpassed the United States when it comes to infrastructure. All right. And now China is lauding itself. And as a result of the polarization of American democracy, they're saying that these are the downfalls of democracy. And in Europe now, even our European quote allies are questioning, how much can we depend on you? It only depends on who's in power at the present time. And what Trump has done is show that, the president, if he can control his party, they can do away with a lot of the treaties and things like that have been developed over hundreds of years. Okay. So what the segment on 60 Minutes showed was that China has outpaced the United States when it comes to infrastructure. And now I don't know how you say his name, Jinping, or the leader of the party in China, he is attacking their capitalists. He's like Alibaba, which is one of the big ones.
Yep.
This you may have heard about
software. It's a social media company.
Yes.
Alibaba. Yeah.
Yeah, and this real estate company that's now in trouble over there, who have a lot of property. He's attacking them, and what the lady from China was saying is that the president of the party is for the common person, and he doesn't like this capitalist control where and how to help it. When you play out the capitalist model, one person is going to end up with everything. One or two or a few. We see now what's happening. A few people.
Winner takes all.
Yeah, winner takes all. And the guy in China, the president of China's party, he doesn't like that. So he's attacking these people and making them pay higher salaries to their people, make more charitable donations. Now, we don't like the way he does it, because what he does, he puts them in isolation for 3 or 4 months. And that's what he did to the guy from Alibaba. And they showed this guy from Alibaba, he came out after this 3 months and he was real humble. But his company has now began to make more charitable donations, and they're paying their people higher. So I recommend that you read that. Not that I'm for communism, but I'm just saying that everything ain't all bad or all good.
I thought you were going to recommend that Bill Gates get a hiatus.
No. No.
But the point is made. The question is, what is the role of the state in looking after ordinary people? And the least of these, and how can we let capitalism and individualism run amok, where people are encouraged to and line up behind the idea that winner can take all, and if you lose, that's your problem. One of the things that I when I got this piece yesterday, I was on a call put on by United Way here in Twin Cities. It was one of a series of programs on diversity and inclusion. The directors of United Way were looking at, the consequence of race and racism and sexism and how should the community, business, and social move forward together. And I share with them a piece of this. And one of the things that I wanted to share was a summary in this piece from Dr. Caesar Atuire. And I'm going to try to locate it right here, but it was a good piece and it speaks to what you're talking about right now as well. Well, the abstract for this piece, I'll start with this. It's just a paragraph. It says the killing of George Floyd by Minneapolis police officers and the subsequent Black Lives Matter protest have been accompanied by calls for the removal of statues of racists from public space. This has generated debate about the role of statues in the public sphere. I argue that statues are erected to represent a chosen narrative about history. The debate about the removal of statues is a controversy about history and how we relate to it. From this perspective, the Black Lives Matter movement is not a drive to remove or topple statues, but a call for an honest examination of systemic racism and the residual effects of slavery. This call can be a kairos to engage in constructive dialogue about the societies we aspire to live in. The result of this dialogue, which includes a re-examination of dominant narratives, will decide which statues and monuments can occupy public space and represent our societies. I think that's a cool summation of this because it hits the points of dominant narratives. Whose story is being told? Who is the author and the owner? And our experience here is that we're living inside somebody else's narrative. We have our own narrative inside of that. Our narrative is one that tries to show us who we are to each other, but we also know that we live under the threat of who we are to people outside of our community, to others altogether. So that's an interesting thing. I see we're getting joined by my colleague, Dr. Vincent Hayden. You met Peter Hayden, right, Kamal?
Yes,
fellow,
on a previous show.
Fellow Kansas City.
How are you?
I'm doing fine, thank you, Brother Hayden. How are you?
Good. I'm in Denver, Colorado, but I can tell you about that too.
Well, okay. Peter, thank you for joining. Kamal and I are just talking about the question of culture and narratives. We'll come back to that. I know you haven't got a lot of time to be with us, but thank you for jumping on the call. And I've been trying to reach you because you were in a press conference with the governor of Minnesota, Lieutenant Governor and State Representative Ruth Richardson, Commissioner of Public Safety, John Harrington, and others last week, a week and a half ago, I think. And you were there for the signing of a bill which created a task force to study or to address the question of murdered and missing Black women and girls. And I haven't talked to you since that time personally, except for briefly today, but I sent you a note. I wanted to tell you how moving and how important and thoughtful your testimony was on that press conference, that news conference. So I want to thank you because you talked about the fact that your daughter is a victim of murder, of senseless violence. And the connection here, Kamal, is that Taylor Hayden was killed in Atlanta, where you are, in your town.
Right.
And so I wanted Dr. Hayden to come on and talk about the importance of that legislation, of that event, signing that at the Capri Theater in North Minneapolis, our community where we work and live, and also to talk about why you're in Denver as well, because you're there receiving an award for the pioneering work you have done with Turning Point. So Dr. Hayden, good to see you, my brother.
Thank you.
And congratulations.
Thank you so much. I'm in a hotel, but then there's so much noise outside. I'm in a booth. So I hope you can hear me well.
Well, it's actually perfect, like soundproof booth. So we got a good audio, very good audio. Excellent.
Good, good, good. Well, Al, thank you so much for having me on, and thank you for calling again. I would like to just talk a little bit about the governor and what he was having. It's called Missing Murdered Black Women. Over 75,000 Black women are missing right now or have been murdered, and not enough emphasis has been put on this. You know, they talk a lot about other people, European women, etc. But when it comes to our women and our children, we don't hear a lot. And so my son, Senator Jeff Hayden, started this about 3 years ago. Well, no, he started right after Taylor was killed, taken from us. And the sister pulled it through. And so they have this committee to look at what's happening and why do we continue when it comes to people who look like us, especially our women. Why do we ignore that? And so that's what I was talking about. I was talking about Taylor, a young lady who graduated from a HBCU, Prairie View, grew up in a good family, mother, father, available at all times, played varsity, ran varsity track, football, all of that, was a senior scholar. Everything you would ask of your Black child, woman, we did. And coming from Kansas City on 23rd and Vine, I come a long ways, brother. You know, to be able to raise a family of a senator, all three girls are graduates from college, etc. So that's what we were talking about, and I think Taylor and her brother spurred on the need for us to look at Black women and girls, and when you snatch them, it's not, you don't see them as you do others. And I think this committee is going to go far. Al, we're going to want you to be a prominent point, bringing up those issues if it's not happening fast enough with regards to our young people, and especially the women, because it's not babies, not just girls. It's 75,000 women are missing right now, and you don't know where they are. And that's the first part. The second part is that I'm here in Denver, Colorado, accepting on behalf of Turning Point, the people who have worked for Turning Point over 45 years, people like yourself, Al, and others, an award from the National Association of Addiction Treatment Providers. Now, the thing with this is that, Al, you know, we've been around, you know, come next month, I'll be sober 49 years. And Turning Point's been around 46 years. And I could, on one hand, Al, say, why did it take so long? But, you know, there's a scripture that talks about it's not when you want it, but it's when God wants you to have it. And so I'm accepting this award on behalf of the people we serve, the people who have supported us, and we're going to continue to go ahead. It's tonight at 6:30 Mountain Standard Time, and one of my chairs back in the day has flown out. Scott Begeese, you know Liz Begeese.
Sure,
he lives out here now. He's coming. My children, Jeff, his wife. And I'm so excited about this piece. And what I will be able to do, Al, is they're going to video it, and I'll send it to you.
Sure. Well, we can play it out on this program as well. That'd be great.
Okay.
Well deserved. Well deserved. There are several African American women in the Atlanta area who are missing. who've just gone missing, several. And the reason I know that is I still take the newspaper. You know, my family laughs at me because I'm opening up the paper and people say, man, I haven't seen anybody sit down and read a newspaper in a long time. But every now and then the paper will have a story about one of these women. And so I know that there are several in the in the Atlanta area, at least 3, and probably more than that, who have just gone missing. You know.
And I can tell you, they were, I don't know, trying to rob somebody, but she was in a club in Buckhead, man. It wasn't the Bucket of Blood club. It was Buckhead. And the guy ran past her and pushed her while the guy was firing at him, and she caught the bullets.
Yeah.
In Buckhead.
Yeah.
You know.
Weapons.
We started off, Peter, talking about the Second Amendment, and Kamal had recommended that I read this book called The Second. I downloaded it. I'm reading it, but I see, like he suggested, I probably want to purchase the hard copy so I can take notes on it and just work it. But the book is about the premise of the Second Amendment that we understand is protecting the right of the people to bear arms, with the alleged threat being the overstepping of the federal government or foreign powers, the creating a militia. But this book, Kamal tells me, focuses on the other agenda that was top of mind at the time of the framing of the Constitution and the writing of the Second Amendment, and that was providing assurance to Southern slaveholders that their system, in effect, supported and required white people, landowners, to bear arms to protect themselves against the potential of insurrection by the enslaved. And so this whole question of guns in our community is a complicated one. What do we do about it? A lot to think about. Kamal?
Yes, it's it's to me, in the way I'm looking at guns now, it's like drugs. I mean, guns are killing us the same way the drugs killed us. And I know it's a huge mountain to climb, but I believe that it can be climbed and it has to be climbed. This proliferation of guns, and anyone can have a gun, as shown in was it in Minnesota where the kid just shot his classmates? His parents bought him the gun.
Michigan.
Yeah, okay.
Last week.
I mean, that story is becoming more and more. It's coming up too often, and I just see guns as a problem, as a major problem. Yeah.
Is your thought, Kamal, that it's possible to create a society, a community, a world where people are not armed, don't need to be armed, or have other ways?
All you gotta do is leave the United States. We are the anomaly. America is the anomaly. When you go outside of America, you go to France, most countries, they don't allow people to have these guns like this. America is the anomaly, and it's based on this slave-holding mentality, keeping these planters in control. That allows it. That was the basic reason for that. I want to back up and say something about these statues too.
Mm-hmm.
Here in Georgia at Stone Mountain, they've carved 3 figures in the side of this mountain. 3 Confederates in the side of this mountain. And if you go out there, it used to have a light show, where they could bring these figures to life. And they'd be more, they're all sitting on horses, and their horses would be, moving forward. And now the question is, why shouldn't they be taken down? Why shouldn't these figures be taken down? And people, the average white person who's supporting this, to say, this is my history. well, this is not really your history. This is not really your history, because most white people did not own slaves. They couldn't afford slaves.
Mm-hmm.
It was only a few who could afford slaves, a very few. But this whole thing about this whole whiteness thing, they're more white than they are anything. They're more white than they are Christian. They're more white than they are American. And that's what's driving them. That's what's driving them.
And that's the question of white supremacy.
White supremacy.
And that's driven by fear. And the fear is the fear of loss of power and control. And also the fear of retribution.
And the hope. I think they use power, control, and retribution, especially retribution, as dog whistles to try to maintain it.
Mm-hmm.
But Chris Rock told a quote joke one time in one of his stand-ups, where he said that I'm black and I'm rich. The white boy out there who's selling popcorn, he wouldn't trade his whiteness for my position.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm rich. And he's selling popcorn. Because the hope, these guys, and I living in corporate America, I used to argue with my colleagues, my colleagues who work with me, who are on the same level as me.
Mm-hmm.
Why are you supporting that? Why are you supporting that? And the only conclusion I could come to was that they knew that they had a possibility of being chosen and that they could be a CEO. That it wasn't based on merit.
It was something else. It was about white.
It's about being white. And I think that's what drives a lot of these white folk.
Peter, you have challenged the industry and been among the leaders in community who have challenged the dominant narrative. Dominant narrative being that if we got a problem, they got a solution. Meaning they described us as the problem. And since we exist as a problem in their midst, they monetize creating solutions. Monetizing it means they make money, right, attending to us. And that's not much different from slavery. It's a variation on the sharecropper experience after legal slavery, but it's a question of control and power. And what you have done, Dr. Peter Hayden, is challenge our state and our community and your industry to say, you know what? You all don't have the answers, because if you had the answers, we wouldn't have the problem. So if you rate your success in solving the problem, sadly, you have failed. And since you have failed and continue to fail, you need to acknowledge that failure and also make room for other people who have ideas and who have a stake in the outcome to come forward and engage the resources, the public treasury and other resources in the problem solving side of the equation. And that's the spirit, I believe, out of which Turning Point has emerged as a major voice, both in the industry and in the country, championing the idea of culturally specific solutions that honor culture and that do not treat culture as a negative, as a liability. You bring culture as an asset, something that is part of the building of health and healing in our community that builds on the legacy of successes in our community. Speak to that, if you would, Dr. Hayden.
Sure. It's so funny. Again, I'll speak to Denver, Colorado. They brought me all the way from Denver, Colorado to do something that the county commissioners, the state of Minnesota has never done. I mean, think about that. Mm-hmm. Think about that. I'm well known in the country and the world, but my own community, and I'm not a preacher, but it says something about something by in its own
A
village.
physician can't heal. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So I'm up here getting this award because of the work over 45 years that has been done, and the people in Minnesota and around the country has done, African Americans. And and they know, Al and Kamara, they know here what I'm doing. That's the only reason I'm still surviving. Otherwise, I'd have been gone. Like, think about how many organizations started when we did.
Quite a few.
AFS, African American Community, all of these, and they're gone.
Mm-hmm.
They are gone because I guess I come from Vine Street. I come from Plymouth Avenue. You know, I just knew how to deal with it. But I do not feel good about accepting an award that is not making our community whole.
Mm-hmm.
You follow me?
I
So people I gotta mess this thing, it just keeps coming in. So I have to accept the award because there are people like Turning Point, et cetera, doing some good things. But at the same time, we should own the industry of chemical health, mental health, prison health, those kinds of things. We should own it. You said it, Al.
Wow.
I do not get anybody, no one calls me up and says, except for, now, don't get me wrong, last year, Hazelden has finally said, we need your help because we don't know how to treat African-American men, women, etc. But my point is, that's been 45 years I've been trying to tell these people that. They don't want to because it's about the dollar.
They're making money.
They're making money.
Yeah, monetizing it.
Yeah.
Capitalism.
So as long as I have friends like the two of y'all and others, I'm gonna be okay. But what happens, Al, when we go?
Mm-hmm.
You understand? What happens when these young folks come along and they're a little different in the mindset of the shoulders that they stand on may not understand that.
They won't understand everything, but the movement's going on.
Yeah.
You know, I don't understand like my grandpa or like Big Al's dad understood, but we understand. Your children understand, and one of the things that I learned a long time ago is that the majority don't do nothing. It's the few. It's the few. A lot of people want to claim, a lot of people our age want to claim victory for the civil rights movement.
Right.
We know that some of them marches were only 15, 20 people. I know that when my mama got coffee thrown in her face desegregating a restaurant, it was 3 of them.
Yeah.
3.
Yeah.
So the movement is going to go on. We have to, I mean, just based on what we know, it wasn't many Sojourner Truths. And as we know, was it Sojourner who was freeing the slaves, who went back? That was Harriet Tubman.
Mm-hmm.
And Harriet Tubman, she even had to threaten some of them that she was taking out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So in my mind, I think that we just do our part. If we do our part, the movement's going to go on. It's going to go on.
That's good to hear sometimes, Kamara. I mean, it's good because, I mean, it's just, you see so much going on, guns, killing. I mean, young folk are beating older people up today. You understand? Right. And some of them say, I'm doing this because my daddy didn't do the right thing, or whatever the case is.
Tell the story. Tell the story, Peter, about outside your building. You said it on a previous program that one day outside your building there were kids watching people get off the bus, and if they were
Yes,
older black men, they beat them up. Tell that
beat them
story
up.
again.
And this is like, I mean, these kids. It was on Lindale and Broadway, which is like Vine and 18th,
Okay, major.
and they would just, elderly people would get off the bus, and if they were older enough, like vulnerable, put it that way, the kids would just jump on them, beat them first, and then take their money. You understand? Because they had no respect for our elders, and that's a cause for concern. You can't beat these little boys. Remember, Al? They were getting off the subway or whatever our transportation is called, and they just start beating people up. Everybody that got off of our rail system,
Train, yeah. Mm-hmm.
they start beating them up. They now, and I don't mean they, but what's happening at one of our black schools like Lincoln up here called North, the kids who are not going to school are waiting till the kids who get out of school at 3:00 and robbing them and taking their cell phones. Mm-hmm. Plus, we're saying get rid of the police. I mean, that's crazy. So what we do at Turning Point, I don't never want to stay in that field, that mindset. What we're doing at Turning Point, many of the people come to Turning Point, those kids are theirs. And we teach them, see, it's not just chemical health or mental health. It's about helping grown people who didn't take care of their kids to start learning how to do that.
Mm-hmm. Good.
It's crazy out here, and so I'm doing some things from a cultural standpoint that these other programs that's getting the money don't care about that. They're getting the money, and then those same people go back into the community without.
Yeah, the society is going through a period of disrespect for norms and cultural norms.
Yeah.
And Leonard Pitts, Al, who you probably know as a columnist, he writes a column. He's a national columnist, but his column appears in Sunday's Atlanta Journal-Constitution.
Okay.
And this past week, his column dealt with this issue of disrespect for cultural norms.
Yes.
And just basic things. Like I noticed it years ago when people were you go in a restaurant and people would have their hats on.
Yes.
When we were kids, you go inside of a building. If you had a roof over your head, you took your hat off.
Yes.
But he brings it all the way up to disobeying subpoenas from the Congress. It's not only in our community, it's just
right.
Disrespect for institutions.
Yes.
Anytime you can draw a picture or show a video of you killing another congressperson. I mean, it's a societal breakdown across the board.
But Kamal, what's the famous quote by Justice Taney, who I think at the dismantling of Reconstruction said, I think maybe it's part of Plessy versus Ferguson, or either part of the Dred Scott decision, said that there is no concern or issue or argument or interest of a black person that a white person has to pay attention to.
Correct.
And so there's that baked in institutional codified disrespect that our community lives under, and that falsely projects this sense of supremacy to those who buy in to this idea of whiteness, right?
Right. But what they don't understand, Al, is that things that negatively impact the Black community, whether it be drugs, disrespect for elders, it doesn't stay in the Black community.
Right.
You know, we went through it in the 70s and 80s with the drugs, but it didn't stay here. It didn't stay in our community. Now it's spread out over the whole country.
And the question is, Peter Hayden, was it already throughout the entire country, just not noticed, not understood, or accepted in a certain way? Was there a way of handling chemical dependency for white people that was built into their system that did not include us, did not pay attention to us, right? And that when we exhibited and did the same kinds of dysfunctional behaviors, then there's an extra layer of it being a real problem now. What do you think, Peter Hayden?
Well, I think this, and it comes back to money. Why do you spend time sending a person to treatment that you can make more money from the penitentiary? That's the bottom line. Think about that. Why would I waste time trying to teach somebody to be different who can be outstanding in our world, our community, when we can keep them where they're at now and make more money? And when it comes time for election, they're counted as a part of that community, not our community.
Yeah.
Interesting. I see my friend and colleague Tom Guitar is here. Kamal, I don't think you've met Tom Guitar. He's the publisher of Imshali, which is a great, phenomenal newspaper here in Twin Cities. And he and I both are leaders in the Minnesota Multicultural Media Consortium. And Vincent, Peter, I think you know Tom. I'm sure you do. Or you know of each other. Good to see you. I asked Tom to jump on if he could before the show is over to give us a quick update to the degree that he could on the trial that started, I think, yesterday or this week. The jury selection last week, but the trial started, I think, today or yesterday. And it's the trial of the Brooklyn Center police officer who said she was mistaken when she discharged her weapon, saying it was going to be a taser, but it ended up being a service revolver, a service weapon, and it killed Dante Wright. Tom, how you doing, man? Good to see. Thanks for jumping on. Any
Hey, no
update?
problem.
Yeah,
Can you hear me?
I hear you perfectly. Put in
Okay.
context what's going on, just so people who are listening don't know what the story is right now.
Yeah. So I believe as you just stated, they did complete jury selection last week. And then I think yesterday, I believe they had what they call pre-trial hearing, which is kind of where the prosecution and the defense kind of, agree on the ground rules, of course, which have, from my understanding, they have agreed on that. So the trial should be starting tomorrow, actually, Wednesday, which is December 8th. And the jury of 12 and two alternates, I believe, majority white, obviously. I believe from my reading, I think it was nine white people and the rest, people of color. So it's the key thing there is that it's much less diverse than the jury that convicted Derek Chauvin, who is the policeman that killed George Floyd. So this jury is much less diverse than that jury. So not sure what to expect, but one other detail though is the lead prosecutor is one of the prosecutors from the Attorney General's office that prosecuted Derek Chauvin. So that's kind of key difference there, because I remember the community had pushed for the Attorney General's office to take over the case, which they did.
Question. Were charges brought right away against this person, or like in the Aubrey case, did somebody have to step in to make charges?
Yeah, charges were brought forward pretty quickly, I think, just because of the whole spotlight that had been going on. But of course, the county had to transfer it to a different county, to a different prosecutor in a different county to prosecute, to avoid any quote-unquote conflict of interest. But the community was very much up in arms because the original prosecutor was going in with lesser charges, and the community was not too happy about that, and they pushed for Attorney General Keith Ellison to take over the case, which he eventually did. So that so we're kind of waiting to see what happens. Nobody's very sure, but everybody's kind of bracing for whatever else. We're kind of a bit battle hardened now, I think, with people's reaction when these verdicts are read. So we don't know.
The community, Kamal, went up in flames and in tension after the incident. And so the city itself was still reeling from George Floyd and trying to recover and stabilize. And this event happened in the suburb. The suburb is one of the fastest growing so-called people of color, BIPOC communities in Minnesota. And there may be more African Americans in Brooklyn Park than there are in North Minneapolis, where I am. I'm not sure what the numbers are, Tom, but it's a significantly bellwether type community in that it's like the city council, I think, in Brooklyn Center probably has 5 people, 4, and the mayor. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And
so and actually actually, I'm glad you mentioned Brooklyn Center, because just last night the city council voted to finally, they have been talking about this for the last few months, to create a Department of Public Safety of some kind, which is what Minneapolis was trying to do with this last referendum that they had in November that failed. So Brooklyn Center it looks like they are going to have a stab at it and see what they can do to bring a different approach to public safety.
To reimagine
Correct.
policing.
Yep, that's the key word. Yes.
And that might be a more manageable environment to do it in.
Because it's a small city.
Fewer people. Yeah,
it's a small city, so it's I think it's a good place to try this out and see how it goes. And I think the mayor and the city council, actually, they seem very committed to doing something from what I can tell.
Okay, great. Well, Tom, thank you for joining us
Sure.
for
Anytime,
the program here. Last minute or so, Dr. Hayden, once again, congratulations on the award you're receiving out in Denver for your work and the work of your staff, the pioneering leadership of Turning Point. Thank you so much, and congratulations.
Yeah, congrats. Yeah, Al, if I can say, I can tell Mr. King, in Kenya, your first name I'm sure you've been told this already. We say it Kamau.
Yeah, it's a surname.
Yes.
I lived in Kenya for about 3 months.
Oh, really? Okay.
In Nairobi. I had hair then, so I was at a barber shop, and the phone rung, and they said, Kamau, Mr. Kamau. And 4 people stood up.
The common name with the Kikuyu people over there. And the first president, Jomo Kenyatta, one of his names was Kamau.
Yes.
So the founding father of the nation.
Yes.
That's another conversation.
Yes.
I talked about an essay that I read part of, and I'm reaching out to the writer. That is Dr. Cesar Alimsinya Atuire. He is from Ghana, but he wrote a piece called Black Lives Matter and the Removal of Racist Statues. And the piece opens up with a discussion of the impact of George Floyd. And I think that George Floyd was a global event. And this is a testament to that. So I'm going to share this with all of us here and ask him, Professor Dr. Aturi, to join us in the conversation in the future to talk about this whole question of Black Lives Matter and racism racist statues, and more. Listen, we're out of time. Thank you all for being here. We'll see you next time.
Thanks,
I'm Al McFarlane. Take care.
Good seeing you.
Dr. Hayden.